My name is Maya Collins. I'm 30 years old, and for most of my adult life, I believed being the dependable daughter meant staying quiet while everyone else leaned on me. I paid bills no one admitted existed. I covered emergencies that were never really emergencies. I smiled through family dinners where my money was welcome, but my voice was not. Then one afternoon, in the middle of a Mother's Day brunch I had arranged and paid for, my mother looked at me like I was a stranger begging for attention. Her voice cut through the table so sharply that even the server froze. She said I had never done anything meaningful for this family. Then she told me I was useless, that they had never needed me, and that I should leave before I embarrassed myself any further. Nobody defended me. Not one person. I did not scream. I did not throw the truth across the table. I simply placed my napkin beside my untouched plate, picked up my purse, and walked out. What they did not know was that my silence was not weakness. It was the beginning of the end. For 1 month, no one called to ask if I was okay. Then my brother's number flashed across my phone, and the first words out of his mouth were not an apology. He sounded panicked and asked why his school said the payments had stopped. I looked at the screen, finally understanding exactly what I had been to them, and I said, "Ask the family I supposedly never supported." After that, I removed every card, every account, every safety net connected to them. And within 48 hours, the family that claimed it never needed me began to collapse. Before I tell you what happened after I walked away, tell me this. What time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? I want to know how far this story travels. For years before that Mother's Day brunch, I had been the person who fixed problems nobody else wanted to name. I did not start out wealthy. I did not wake up one morning with a business, a house, and enough savings to rescue everyone. I earned every piece of my life the hard way. In college, I had a scholarship, 2 part-time jobs, and a used Honda that made a grinding sound every time I turned left. I studied veterinary care because animals were the one thing that had always made sense to me. They did not flatter you when they needed something. They did not pretend love was the same as ownership. They came to you scared, sick, or hurting. And if you helped them, they trusted you. After graduation, I worked in a crowded clinic outside Austin, then saved enough to buy an old van and turn it into a mobile veterinary service. At first, people laughed at the idea. My father said driving around, giving vaccines, and treating dogs in people's driveways was not a real career. My mother said it sounded like something a person did when they could not get hired anywhere better. My brother barely looked up from his phone when I told him I had my first 10 clients. But I kept going. I worked weekends. I answered emergency calls at midnight. I helped elderly owners who could not lift their pets into cars. I treated rescue animals for half price when shelters were overwhelmed. Slowly, the van became 2 vans, then 3. Then I hired a vet tech, then another. By the time I turned 30, my mobile clinic had a waiting list, contracts with senior living communities, and more stability than anyone in my family had ever expected from me. That was when their tone changed. Suddenly, my work was not embarrassing. Suddenly, they were proud of how independent I was. Suddenly, I was family in a way I had not been when I was eating noodles over my sink and praying my checking account would survive one more week. The first request was small. My mother said the property tax bill on the house in Plano had come at the worst time and asked if I could cover it just until my father's commission check cleared. I said yes. Then my father's truck needed repairs because he said he could not get to work without it. I paid. Then my mother's insurance premium was due, and she said it would look terrible if a woman who sold insurance had a policy lapse. I paid again. Each time, they told me it was temporary. Each time, they promised they would make it up to me. They never did. Then came my brother's aviation program. He had decided he wanted to become a commercial pilot, and my parents treated that decision like he had announced he was saving the world. They talked about his future like it belonged to all of them, like one day he would fly private jets and bring honor to the family name. The tuition was expensive, the flight hours were expensive, the equipment was expensive, and somehow every expensive part of his dream found its way to my inbox. My mother said I was lucky to be in a position to help. My father said family invested in family. My brother said he would pay me back when he was making pilot money. I wanted to believe them. I really did. So I added my card to the school portal. I helped with his flight gear. I covered missed payments when my parents claimed their bank account was tight. I even co-signed a truck loan because my father insisted my brother needed reliable transportation to get to training. Looking back, the strange part is not that they asked. Families ask for help. The strange part is how quickly help became expectation. A thank you disappeared first. Then updates disappeared. Then respect disappeared. They did not call to say the payment went through. They called when another payment was due. They did not ask whether I could afford it. They assumed I could. If I hesitated, even slightly, my mother would get cold. She would say things like, "I thought you cared about your brother's future," or, "It must be nice to forget where you came from." My father preferred disappointment. He would sigh into the phone and say he guessed he would figure it out somehow, which always meant he expected me to step in before he had to. My brother did not bother with guilt. He just sent screenshots of balances and wrote, "Can you handle this before Friday?" I told myself they were under stress. I told myself successful people should give back. I told myself love sometimes looked like carrying more weight. But deep down, a part of me knew the truth. I had not become their daughter again. I had become their safety net. And the worst thing about being a safety net is that nobody notices you until they fall. The Mother's Day brunch was supposed to be simple. That was what I kept telling myself as I drove from Austin to Dallas that morning with a boxed cake on the passenger seat and a bouquet of white roses wrapped in paper behind me. Simple brunch, simple smiles, simple 2 hours. I had booked a table at a steakhouse my mother loved, the kind with leather booths, polished glasses, and waiters who called everyone ma'am. She liked places like that because they made her feel important. I had paid the reservation deposit 2 weeks earlier. I had ordered the cake from a bakery she followed online. I had even called ahead to make sure they could bring out flowers after the meal, because she loved little public moments where people looked at her and clapped politely. When I arrived, everyone was already there, and for a second I let myself believe it might be a peaceful day. My mother smiled when she saw the flowers. My father nodded at me like I was an employee who had delivered something on time. My brother was scrolling through flight school videos on his phone, barely lifting his head when I sat down. I tried not to care. I asked about his training. He talked for 15 straight minutes about weather patterns, aircraft maintenance, and how his instructor said he had natural instincts. My mother glowed as if every word came from a future celebrity. My father told the waiter that his son was going to be a pilot, and the waiter smiled because that is what waiters do when customers want to be admired. Then my mother started telling the table how proud she was that our family had always worked hard for everything we had. That sentence sat in my chest like a stone. I looked at the menu, then at the cake I had paid for, then at my brother's watch, which I knew had been bought with a card payment I covered after he called it a graduation expense even though he had not graduated from anything yet. I did not want to ruin the day. I did not want to fight. So I waited until after the main course, when the waiter had cleared the plates and my mother had finished accepting compliments for the flowers she had not bought. I leaned closer and said quietly that I needed everyone to start planning for their own expenses over the next few months. I explained that my clinic was expanding, and I had payroll, vehicle maintenance, insurance, medical equipment, and a new route opening for senior communities. I said I could not keep covering every emergency without notice. I said it gently. I said it like a responsible adult talking to other responsible adults. My mother's smile vanished so fast it was like someone had turned off a light. She stared at me across the table and said, "Are you seriously bringing up money today?" I told her I was not trying to make the day about money. I just needed them to understand the situation before the next payment cycle. My father shifted in his seat and muttered that timing mattered. My brother finally looked up, but only because his future had heard a threat. He asked if this was about his school. I said it was about all of it, not just him. The house expenses, the insurance, the truck, the flight payments, the backup cards. I said I love them, but love could not mean one person quietly paying for everyone forever. That was when my mother laughed. It was not a warm laugh. It was sharp and ugly. The kind of laugh meant to embarrass you before the words even arrive. She said, "You always do this, Maya. You act like you are carrying the whole world when all you have ever done is make things harder." I froze. People at the next table glanced over. I kept my voice low and told her that was not fair. She leaned forward, her face turning red, and then she raised her voice enough for the whole room to hear. She said I had never contributed a thing to this family. For a second, I thought I had misheard her. I truly did. Not because the words were complicated, but because my brain refused to accept that the woman whose bills I had been paying could say that while sitting at a table, I had reserved with money from my own business. I looked at my father. He looked away. I looked at my brother. He picked up his glass and stared into it like the ice had become fascinating. My mother kept going. She said I was always dramatic, always trying to make everyone feel guilty, always desperate to be seen as special. Then she said the sentence that made every sound in the restaurant fade behind a ringing in my ears. "You are useless. We never needed you. Stop embarrassing yourself and leave." There it was. Not a mistake. Not a misunderstanding. A verdict. I felt something inside me go still. Not break, exactly. Breaking sounds violent. This felt quieter than that, like a door closing in a house no one knew was empty. I wanted to tell her about every invoice, every late night, every payment confirmation, every time I had chosen their comfort over my own peace. But I knew what would happen if I did. They would call me emotional. They would say I was ruining Mother's Day. They would twist the truth until I looked cruel for mentioning it. So I did not defend myself. I folded my napkin once, placed it beside my plate, stood up, and picked up my purse. My mother looked satisfied, like she had won. That was her first mistake. My brother whispered my name, not with concern, but with warning, as if I was supposed to remember my place before I made his life inconvenient. I looked at him, then at my father, then at my mother. I said nothing. I walked past the hostess stand, past the glass doors, into the bright Texas afternoon, and I did not look back. Behind me, they still had the cake, the flowers, the table, and the performance. What they did not have anymore was me. The drive back to Austin felt longer than it should have. For the first hour, I heard my mother's voice over and over. "You are useless. We never needed you. Stop embarrassing yourself." By the second hour, I stopped crying. By the third, I was calm, and that calm scared me more than anger would have. Anger might have made me call and yell. Calm made me practical. When I got home, I did not change clothes, pour wine, or post anything online. I opened my laptop and made a list. Flight school portal, truck loan, insurance premium, property tax escrow, home equity loan documents, emergency credit card, RV trailer registration, utility backup account. Every line was a thread tying me to people who had just denied I had ever held anything together. I started with the simple things. I removed my card from future flight school payments. I did not reverse anything I had already paid. I simply stopped funding it. I removed myself from the truck loan autopay and requested written confirmation of my obligations. I canceled the backup card attached to my parents' utilities. I changed passwords on every account my mother had access to. Each step was legal. Each step was quiet. Each step felt like cutting a rope I had mistaken for family. The complicated items went to my attorney, Priya Shah. She had handled contracts for my clinic and knew how to read fine print like a weapon. I sent her the home equity loan documents, RV title, bank transfers, insurance receipts, and messages where my parents promised repayment. I wrote, "I need to know what I can end, what I can reclaim, and what I should not touch without legal guidance." She answered the next morning, "I was wondering when you would finally ask." That sentence hit me hard. It meant someone else had seen the pattern before I was ready to name it. For the next few days, my phone stayed strangely silent. No apology. No message asking if I got home safely. My mother did not call. My father did not call. My brother did not call. At first, the silence hurt. Then it explained everything. They were not worried they had lost me. They were waiting for me to return to my role. They thought I would cool down, feel guilty, and turn the money back on before anything important came due. I packed a small bag, put my clinic manager in charge of non-emergency operations, and drove west. I booked a quiet ranch Airbnb outside Santa Fe, a place with a porch, wooden floors, and a view wide enough to make my problems feel smaller. The first night, I sat outside with my phone face down. The silence felt strange. I kept expecting a demand, a crisis, a new bill disguised as family. Nothing came. The next morning, I drank coffee from a chipped blue mug and realized how tired I had been. Not just physically tired. I was tired of being useful. Tired of being the person who could never have a hard month because everyone else had built their good months around my sacrifice. For almost 4 weeks, I stayed mostly unreachable. I checked in with my clinic. I answered Priya. I ignored everything else. No one truly reached out. No apology came. Then, exactly 1 month after brunch, my brother called. Once, twice, 5 times. Then he texted, "Maya, answer. It is about school." I stared at those words for a long time. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Mom went too far." Just, "It is about school." The system had finally noticed the missing wire. I let the phone ring one more time before I answered. I did not sound cheerful or angry. I simply said, "What is it?" My brother's voice came through tight and fast. He asked why the school said his payments had stopped. Not how I was doing. Not whether I was still upset. Not whether he should apologize for staying silent while our mother humiliated me. His first concern was the money. That should have hurt, but mostly it confirmed what the last month had taught me. I asked which payment he meant, though I already knew. He said the aviation program had sent a notice that his next training block could not be confirmed until the balance was resolved. His instructor had warned him that missed payments could push him to the back of the flight schedule. He said I needed to fix it before Monday because he could not afford to lose hours. The word afford almost made me close my eyes. He could not afford to lose hours, but I had been affording everything else for him. The tuition, the plane rental, the testing fees, the simulation lab, the equipment, and the truck that carried him to training. I asked if he had talked to our parents. He snapped that this was not about them. I said it was absolutely about them. He told me not to be dramatic. There it was again, the family word for truth that made them uncomfortable. I looked out over the porch and said, "Ask the family I supposedly never supported." He went quiet. Then he exploded. He said I was punishing him for something Mom said. He said his future was on the line. He said real family did not pull support without warning. I reminded him that I had warned everyone at brunch. I had said I needed them to plan for their own expenses. I had said I could not carry every bill forever. In response, our mother called me useless and told me to leave. He said she did not mean it like that. I asked how she meant it. He said I knew how Mom got when she was embarrassed. I said I was the one she embarrassed. He had no answer, so he said Dad was going to be furious. I told him Dad could be furious with the bank, the school, the lender, or himself. I was no longer accepting unpaid family labor. His voice dropped then. For the first time, I heard fear under the entitlement. He asked what he was supposed to do. I said, pay for your own training, apply for aid, work at the airport, delay the program, do what everyone else does when they want something expensive. He said I was being cruel. I said no, I am being honest after years of being convenient. Then I ended the call. My hands were shaking, but not from regret. Within minutes, the family group chat started lighting up. My mother wrote my name in all capital letters. My father demanded that I call him immediately. My brother sent messages saying this was insane. I did not answer. I opened my laptop and removed every saved payment method still attached to their accounts. I deleted shared access to my receipt folder. I removed my mother as an authorized user from an emergency card she had promised to use only when serious, then used for groceries, salon deposits, and a weekend hotel booking she called necessary for stress. I changed the insurance portal password, removed auto-transfer permissions, and emailed Priya with the subject line, "It started." Her reply came 20 minutes later. Good. Do not engage emotionally. Save everything. So I saved every text, voicemail, and threat disguised as concern. That night, I sat on the porch until the stars came out. For years, I had confused peace with everyone else being okay. But peace was not keeping everyone comfortable. Peace was finally refusing to disappear inside their comfort. By morning, the first real consequence arrived. By the end of 48 hours, the family that said it never needed me would learn the exact cost of my absence. Part 6. The first 12 hours were about the school. My brother's aviation portal locked his next flight block because the balance had not been paid. He had been scheduled for a training sequence that required instructor availability, aircraft reservation, and weather clearance. Without payment confirmation, his slot was released to another student. He sent me a screenshot with 3 question marks, as if punctuation could shame me back into obedience. Then he called again. I let it go to voicemail. His message started angry and ended scared. He said I did not understand how competitive the schedule was. He said losing flight hours could delay his certification. He said if I cared about his future, I would stop playing games. I saved the voicemail and did nothing. By hour 18, the truck lender sent a warning. The payment normally came from an account my father controlled, but when it ran short, my card covered the difference automatically because I had agreed years earlier to be the emergency backup. Back then, my father called it a technicality. With my backup removed, the lender contacted him directly. He called me 6 times. His voicemail was pure outrage. He said my brother needed that truck, that I was attacking a young man's career, that I was acting like a spoiled child with money. I listened once, saved it, and sent it to Priya. She replied, "Let them talk. We will use their words if needed." By hour 24, my mother finally panicked, but not with an apology. She texted that Mother's Day had been emotional and mature people did not weaponize a single conversation. A single conversation. That was what she called years of taking, public humiliation, and the moment she said they never needed me while sitting in front of a cake I paid for. Then her insurance premium bounced. That mattered to her because she sold insurance for a living and built her image on stability, family protection, and responsible planning. Now her own policy had a payment issue, and she no longer had access to my card to hide it. She called from a blocked number. I answered because I wanted to hear which version of her would appear. She did not say sorry. She said, "Fix this before people start asking questions." I asked if she was worried people would learn her daughter had been paying the bills that kept her image intact. She went silent, then called me cruel. I told her cruelty was calling your daughter useless after depending on her for years. Then I hung up. By hour 36, Priya called. She had reviewed the home equity loan documents and repayment messages. Years earlier, my parents had needed help after a plumbing issue damaged part of the house. They called it protecting the family home. My father promised in writing that my contribution would be repaid when he refinanced. He never refinanced. He never repaid. Instead, they described the renovation like something they had achieved through discipline. Priya said there was a clear paper trail, transfers, messages, and signed acknowledgement. She could issue a formal repayment demand and protect my claim before they tried to move assets or twist the story. I told her to proceed. By hour 40, the social media performance began. My mother posted an old family barbecue photo with a caption about children forgetting who raised them. The comments came quickly. "Praying for you. Kids today are so ungrateful. A mother's love is never appreciated." My brother posted an Instagram story saying some people abandon family during a crisis and still think they are the victim. My father called relatives and told them I had become arrogant because of my business. The old me would have rushed to explain. This time, I waited. Then I called Aunt Marlene, my mother's older sister, and one of the only people who had ever really seen me. When she answered, she said, "I wondered how long you were going to keep paying for people who treated you like a problem." I sent her a folder: flight school invoices, insurance payments, truck loan notices, property tax receipts, the home repair transfer, the RV title, the cake deposit from Mother's Day, because sometimes the smallest receipt tells the loudest truth. I told her I was not asking her to fight for me. I just wanted someone to know the truth before they buried it. She said, "Truth does not need to scream, but it does need a witness." 10 minutes later, under my mother's Facebook post, Aunt Marlene commented, "Denise, are you sure you want people asking who paid those bills?" The post disappeared within 5 minutes. My brother's story came down shortly after. That was the first time I felt satisfaction. Not because they were hurting, but because the lies had stopped being profitable. By the end of the second day, Priya found the cleanest thread of all. The RV trailer my family loved, the one they used for lake weekends and smiling Facebook albums, was fully in my name. I had bought it after my father said it would help us spend time together without expensive vacations. He promised they would handle storage and maintenance. Of course, I paid those too. The title was mine. The loan was mine. The insurance was mine. They only had the keys because I had trusted them. Priya said I had every legal right to recover it. The RV was not just a vehicle, it was a symbol. They drove around in something I paid for while telling people I had never given them anything. I told Priya to arrange the recovery properly. No threats, no drama, everything by the book. The next morning, formal notice went out. Within an hour, my mother called over and over. My father left a voicemail saying I had crossed a line. My brother texted, "You are seriously taking the RV too?" I sent one final message to the group chat before blocking the thread. "You said you never needed me. I am returning your life to the version where I am not supporting it." 3 days later, at a storage lot outside Dallas, they had to face me without the protection of my silence. Part 7. The storage lot sat beside a service road, surrounded by chain-link fencing, faded signs, and rows of boats, trailers, and RVs baking under the Texas sun. It was not a dramatic place for a family to face the truth. There were no marble floors, no courtroom gasps, no music swelling in the background. Just gravel under my shoes, dust in the air, and the RV trailer sitting at the far end like a monument to every lie they had told about independence. Priya stood beside me with a folder under one arm. The paperwork was confirmed. The locks had been changed. The title was verified. The recovery was legal. I was not there to argue. I was there to end access. My family arrived 15 minutes late in my father's truck. My brother got out first, jaw tight, trying to look intimidating even though his eyes went straight to the RV. My father followed, red-faced and stiff, the way he always looked when reality refused to obey him. My mother stepped out last. She wore sunglasses, but I could tell she had been crying or wanted me to think she had. She looked smaller than she had at the steakhouse, but not softer. There is a difference. She walked toward me without greeting Priya or looking at the paperwork. She said, "You are really going to destroy this family over one argument." I looked at her, and for the first time I did not feel like the daughter begging to be seen. I said, "No, I am ending a system that only worked because I stayed quiet." My father pointed at the RV and said I was humiliating them. I told him I had learned humiliation from the best, in a restaurant, in front of strangers, while the people I supported looked away. My brother stepped forward and said I was ruining his aviation career. For a second, I saw the scared young man beneath the entitlement, but seeing fear did not mean I had to become his solution again. I told him I was not ruining his dream. I was refusing to finance a dream that had no respect for the person paying for it. He said building it himself would take years. I said most dreams do when someone else is not quietly buying them for you. My mother took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were wet, but her voice still had that sharp edge. She asked what they were supposed to do now. I knew what she wanted. She wanted me to feel guilty, see her fear, and become the old Maya again. I said, "Do what you told everyone you always did. Handle it without me." For once, nobody had a quick answer. Priya handed the final documents to the storage manager. The RV would be prepared for sale, and the proceeds would go toward the debt tied to my name. It would not make me whole, but it would close one door they had kept open with my trust. My father said I would regret this when I had no family left. I told him I had spent years surrounded by relatives and still felt alone. Being alone honestly sounded better than being used loudly. My mother flinched, but she still did not apologize. That was the final lesson she gave me. Some people are not sorry when they hurt you. They are sorry when hurting you stops working. Over the next few weeks, the consequences became real. My brother lost his preferred training schedule and took a job with an airport ground crew to keep his aviation dream alive. For the first time, he was near planes without pretending someone else should pay for his place in them. My father had to negotiate directly with lenders he used to avoid by letting my money fill the gaps. My mother lost several clients after her polished family image cracked. Not because I exposed every detail, but because the version of herself she sold could not survive one honest question. The house in Plano did not vanish overnight, but the legal claim forced them to refinance under pressure and give up the fantasy that they could build comfort on unpaid promises. They were not destroyed. They became responsible. To them, it probably felt the same. As for me, I went back to Austin and put my energy where it belonged. My clinic expanded its senior pet care program, and I redirected what would have been my brother's next training payment into a small scholarship for veterinary technician students. The first recipient worked nights at a shelter and cried when she learned the award would cover her certification exam. That gave me something my family never had: purpose. A few months later, my brother emailed me. The subject line was, "I am sorry." He wrote that working at the airport had shown him how many people fought for opportunities without anyone paying their way. He wrote that he had been selfish and should have defended me at brunch. Maybe he meant it. Maybe life had finally made regret convenient. I did not answer that night. I archived the email and drove home under the orange Austin sky, feeling no rush to forgive on anyone else's schedule. I had spent too many years confusing forgiveness with immediate access. Now I understood that peace could have boundaries, love could have distance, family could be real without being allowed to drain you dry. The lesson I carried from all of it was simple. Your value is not measured by how much pain you can absorb quietly. It is not measured by how many bills you pay for people who would not defend your name. Real family does not require you to disappear so everyone else can feel comfortable. Real love teaches responsibility, gratitude, and respect. Sometimes the most educational thing you can do is stop rescuing people who only learn when consequences finally arrive. I did not walk away because I hated them. I walked away because I finally understood that being useful was never the same as being loved. The team behind Revenge Broken Trust is working hard to create meaningful, emotional, and well-crafted stories that can connect with viewers. This is a fictional story, created for educational purposes, with the goal of sharing useful lessons about respect, boundaries, family, and personal growth. This script carries an important educational value. Love should never be used as an excuse to take advantage of someone's kindness. Through Maya's journey, viewers can learn that setting boundaries is not selfish, and real family relationships must be built on gratitude, responsibility, and mutual respect.